Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Oscar Buzz. Today we are talking about A Quiet Place Day One, which is the prequel to the Quiet Place series. There's been two of them. I think that we've both liked them, not necessarily been in love with them. But this is John Krasinski handing the reins off to Michael Sarnoski, who made a debut film that you and I both liked quite a
Pig.
bit in
Everyone should
Pig,
watch that film.
which, to start this out with, if you
Nicolas
haven't seen
Cage
Pig,
robbed. Nicolas Cage was robbed for
watch
that
Pig,
best actor.
and Nicolas Cage should have been nominated for Best Actor.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to follow up something as kind of quiet and tender as Pig with a film that's quiet but in a different way. With a Quiet Place Day One. What did you immediately take away from this?
Well, I mean, you mentioned at the start
Also, you're
that
Thomas.
yes, I mean, I feel like
For
I know this,
if
but
anybody doesn't know.
yeah. No, I feel like at the start you said that he was handing the reins over to Sarnoski, and I'm glad he did that because I do think that the strongest part of this film is the direction he brings and is that unique flavor that is sort of. It feels like a bit of an extension of like he did enter into some horror elements. Obviously, Pig is not horror at all, but it's still building that suspense that I think he is able to create here. I do think where the film really falters is when it does become a sort of slightly more standard horror thing, when it does lean overly on the jump scares and it's not that scary, when it does try like signpost what it is doing. I think those elements don't quite come together, but I appreciated the character focus, and overall I was fairly satisfied with the experience as someone who liked The Quiet Place. Really liked Quiet Place Part 2. That was maybe due to, being immediately after COVID and just being excited to be back in the cinema.
It's a movie. Oh my God, they exist.
Exactly. Yeah. So I was very pleased with that one when that came out. But yeah, I think this is a very natural extension of the franchise. It's not just like, oh, we're doing a prequel for the sake of doing a prequel. It does feel like they had the premise.
There's
and
a
they
lot
did
to
actually,
explore in the world
they
of
actually
content. They could keep
expanded
making
on
these
it.
forever.
Exactly. They actually expand on it. It wasn't just, oh, now we see, oh, I remember that from the first one. I remember that. It's different. It's doing different stuff. I think there are a lot of moments to like, but overall, there are definitely some problems.
Yeah, and it feels like it kind of has its own grammar and language that's separate from the other ones. Obviously, it's still playing with the same concepts, but just it has a far more industrial feel, obviously, compared to the more like rural middle America feel of the other ones. And it plays with a lot of different toys. I thought Lupita was quite good. I mean, we need to get her in more physical roles and less mocap roles, please. Because just a great actress. I wasn't as impressed with Joseph Quinn. I found his character to be just a bit flat and just kind of as like a backboard to bounce ideas off of to keep the film moving rather than a fully realized character in any way. And I don't really think that Joseph Quinn did anything in his performance to elevate it above that, where maybe he could have. But
I can see that complaint. I do think Lupita is obviously the much more interesting part of this film. But I don't think Joseph Quinn was just this background material, like in a way. Like he's not Tom Blythe. I feel bad for Tom Blythe, but every time like plain white guy, I'm using the name Tom Blythe as a sort of insert for that one. Just no screen charisma, whatever, just sort of complete filler. I think Joseph Quinn is able to bring something to it. I was slightly disappointed that they brought up the fact that Lupita Nyong'o's character was suffering from a terminal illness, but it didn't go where I was expecting it to go with
and
that.
we'll get into spoilers as well.
Yeah.
This is a spoiler.
It's sort of a spoiler that, but it's first 5 minutes, so I reckon you'll be fine on that
You'll
one.
be fine.
But there was stuff there that you could explore, whereas like she is sort of one person who is coming to terms with dying already, so this thing maybe wouldn't affect her in the same way as it affects everyone else, but it kind of just does. Like it kind of feels like they didn't go anywhere with that.
It forgets about it until the last 10 minutes of the movie.
Pretty much, yeah.
Where then it all of a sudden becomes a thing again. And this is part of my issue with it. I appreciated a lot of Sarnoski's direction, and I think that he does actually balance like the tension building with the more quiet, intimate moments. Like I think that, on paper and as far as his direction goes, like the magic trick sequence is quite nice. And I think it works, and it works to have those smaller moments within this chaos and everything like that, and it works on paper to contrast those ideas. And I think his direction works. As you say, I think that it's the horror elements aren't really there, but I also it didn't feel like he was even trying to make a horror movie really. Like
it felt they were a bit sort of studios put them in, like especially the cat stuff. Like I really think they wanted you to sell them on, the cat's in danger, and that's like bad because people like cats. Like I was never invested in that kind of stuff. It was always the smaller.
I mean, I did feel for the cat, but also I have an issue with the cat.
Sure. But like, it was the smaller character-based moments that really were the stuff that worked for me. And I think the fact that he was able to bring them in when he is creating such a large scope, like I was really appreciative of the fact that
Yeah.
it does feel like the whole world is ending. It does feel like the whole world is in danger. Yet it still manages to maintain this very personal feel. I was really appreciative of that fact. And as you say, it was the sort of more horror studio elements that didn't quite work.
Yeah. So on the cat, I have a cat. I like cats quite a bit. My cat would be fucking dead on day one. But but it's I think either one, and I wrote this on Letterboxd.
Yeah.
Most movies would be better if they were more like EO by Jerzy Skolimowski. I wholeheartedly believe this. Go watch EO if you hadn't. It is about a donkey wandering through the countryside, and then we see humanity through his eyes. Imagine this film where we just follow the cat the entire time. And we're just seeing the chaos of the world and everything happening just like through an animal. It could really be any animal, but just using a cat as an example because of this, it's what's in this film. But like it'd just be like wandering through the city and everything going on, and you just see like these these horrors and these tragedies just from the perspective of an animal. Like I think it'd be really interesting to do that because this is, I think there it taking place in New York and everything like that. There is quite strong 9/11 allegory in here. Like imagine something like that, seeing like this human tragedy, but from the perspective of like a stray animal on the street.
I think that could work as a fun for exercise for one film. I would vehemently bat against that. Like every film or most films you said made better like that.
Well,
That's
okay,
not
but
true.
most
That's
films
not
aren't doing it.
true.
I think if one film did it, then maybe the rest of them wouldn't be improved. But some films should do it.
Sure, maybe. I think it also that would only work better if it's a historical event that we know about. And we're looking through a news perspective. We do need to understand what's going on here. Like we can't just go like the cat doesn't understand what an alien is, and I don't think you could show that visually really. Or probably could, but
you could. I think
very
there's
difficult, and I don't
here.
think I think directors wouldn't be able to handle that, and it would
I
just go
could.
very wrong. Sure, again, this is that's where
I'm built different.
Sure. If you could, then yes, then let's do that. But anyway, back to the film. Yes, like what were you saying? We're making the point.
I was gonna continue to point out the cat.
Yeah, keep going with the cat.
The cat is one of the most obvious plot devices I've seen in a film in a while. It is so clearly only there to like escape 2 or 3 times, so that way the humans have to be like, oh, gotta go get the cat, and then it puts them in danger. That is the only reason the cat exists, and this is kind of segmenting into my broader issue with the film, where I found it really hard to stay in the film and emotionally connected and invested with the characters because there were so many like transparent like just plot devices and setups and payoffs that were so clearly telegraphed from the moment that they're introduced, to where everything about the film where it should have, that's why I kept on saying on paper for the intimate moments working, because I do think that the direction is there. But by the time we get to them, like with the pizza, right? It is so clear from the moment that is introduced exactly where that is going. And then you just wait 45, 50 minutes to get there. And by the time you get there, like it doesn't feel like a cathartic resolution because they don't do anything. They don't develop this setup at all. They stay very static throughout the entire film. So then all of these devices, when they're paid off, the piece of one's just an example. There's a couple like it. But when they are all finally paid off, they've just been these kind of static things that are hanging around the film that get brought up every once in a while with absolutely no change. So then we don't feel like it's this moment of change for the characters. It just feels like, oh, well, that finally happened. That thing that was set up that we knew was going to happen this entire time. And because of that, it felt like, again, it felt a bit mechanical and lifeless to me. Like they were just following like this template of how to set up and pay off narrative beats, rather than it feeling more natural, which just, it kept on taking me out of the film and really undercut a lot of the emotional moments that should have been stronger.
I understand that to an extent. I do think this film does feel quite templated. I think before you said that, yes, you could see exactly where each beat is coming from. It is very safe for Cat. It's not doing anything to elevate itself. Beyond that, it is safe. But I don't think that safeness translates into unimaginative. Or for me personally, I think that safeness stops it from elevating itself to being something truly great, something remarkable, something I will remember forever. But I don't think it stops it from still being, on the whole, a satisfying experience, which I think is achieved through, as we say, the tender direction, and I think the performances.
Sure, I had a fine time watching it. I didn't have a bad time watching it.
I think they create this overall satisfying enough experience, without elevating itself beyond what it potentially could have been if you just
Yeah.
pulled a few more of these strings, had slightly more of an emotional through line throughout, rather than just survival. Because survival is the easiest thing you can do in film. If your
Right.
main driving force is survival, like that is a human driving force anyway, it's very easy. It's very
And
obvious what you
it
do.
didn't
So
really do anything with that when it could
no,
have, I feel.
no.
And it was just a bit like, I would call it unimaginative, and I do think it was just a bit frustrating in its unimaginativity is a
Sure.
word.
Yeah.
And, like, it's a perfectly competent film. I don't think that there's any, like, glaring issues with it. It just felt a bit bleh, and it's not something that's gonna stick with me whatsoever. And I think that you can't just write off of, like, the novelty of the premise as much, whereas I do feel like it does do its own thing with it, but I would place it slightly below the other 2
I do
just
think it's the
because.
weakest of the three. I do
Yeah,
think
it
it's
does
the
feel like the
weakest
weakest
of
of the
the
3. Just because I feel like the other 2 can write a bit off that novelty, and at this point in the franchise, you can't do that anymore, and you have to do some other stuff, and I
Which
feel
is
like.
why, yeah, which is why I'm glad they made the director shift. I think that is bringing at least
Yeah, this one would've
something
been worse
to
if
the
it was
table.
directed by Krasinski.
100%, 100%. But yeah,
Yeah.
but having said that, like even though I do think it's the weakest of the three, I think if you enjoyed the three, I think this is still a fairly easy recommendation, something that you will enjoy. I think this is one that,
Yeah.
and maybe that is to do with the safeness of it and its formulativeness. But like I think most people will still have a good time with it. So if it's something that even seems like you're interested in, I would check it out still.
Yeah, for sure. Also, to close this out, this
Mm,
is a spoiler. In the end, kill
yeah.
yourself with a song. What song are you killing yourself to?
Oh,
'Cause I can give my answer. Mine would be I Know
okay.
the End by Phoebe Bridgers. It's this big, like, cinematic climactic piece at the end of Punisher, and then it's also, a bit metaphorical with the title. And I think it'd be, like, a great anthem to go out to.
I think I would go "Things Can Only Get Better" by D-Roof. I think that's a
Alright.
positive I think that's a positive way to sort of end it. Like, yeah, things can only get better after this. You're
Yep,
dying, so
fair
what
enough.
what left is there? So
Fair
that
enough.
would be mine.
I
That'd be
also
mine.
think I don't relate to this film as much because I just have no survival instinct. Like, if something
Oh,
like this
I'm
happened.
dead. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
if an apocalyptic we're getting slightly sidetracked, so
Yeah,
if you wanna thanks for watching the review, I'm giving it a 5 out of 10.
yeah. I'll
Um,
be giving it a 7 just for the
cool.
rating.
So if you wanna continue with this tangent,
Yeah,
if something like this that's apocalyptic happens, I just have no will to live. Like, the world's too
yeah.
far gone, it's fucked up, I'm done with it, just take me.
Like I've always said, like I don't want to exist in a nuclear wasteland. I don't want
Right.
to be one of those people who have to rebuild society. Can you
Right.
imagine how
I don't
long
wanna have to be fighting
rebuilding
for my life every
society
day.
would be?
Like, I
Exactly.
just yeah, and
That's
maybe
why
we're
I'm
just
so glad I live.
and we are probably
Yeah,
just a bit privileged and, but I will accept that I'm privileged and the void can take me.
yeah. No, exactly. Like I'm so glad I live in London because if any major thing happens, like
Yeah,
London
you're
would
one of the
probably be a
places
hot
getting hit.
spot. So I'm
I
getting
would
it first.
unfortunately probably survive
Exactly.
because I'm in the middle
You're
of
in the middle
Illinois.
of nowhere. So yeah, you're
I need
surviving.
some, like,
I'm dead.
aftershock from Chicago to come and get me because
Yeah.
I ain't trying to live through all that.
No.
Russia, if you would like to target okay. Um,
Give your full address there.
my full
Not that the Russians don't know it anyway, probably.
my social security number. Okay.
Yeah.
But yes, anyways, I'm giving this a high 5 to a low 6. A high 5 to a
I'll
low
be
6.
giving this a low 7, so not too far off of each other, but
Yeah.
yeah, overall I'm slightly more positive on it than
Sure.
you.
Cool. Well, those are our thoughts about Quiet Place Day 1 and how we would like to die. Um,
Yeah, got very morbid there at the end.
but we'll have reviews for Kinda Kindness, Bike Riders, Fancy Dance, maybe Horizon, tier lists, lots of fun things coming up. Also, Oscar predictions.
Indeed, we're finally getting back on
We're
the train.
finally getting back into those. But make sure that you stick around for those. And until then, thank you everybody for watching. Stay safe and goodbye.